All right, welcome to Gentle Yin Yoga. We're going to hit all the high notes tonight, sort of focusing on the posture that gets a little rounded and a little compressed when we sit. So the chest, the hip flexors, and then the neck. And so we're actually going to do a pre-test before we even center. And we're just going to see the range of our neck. So you'll take a moment and sit. And as you sit up tall, roll your shoulders up, down, and back. And then see if you can turn your chin so it almost stacks over your one shoulder. Just kind of see where your eyes fall behind you. Just kind of get an idea. Bookmark this range you have looking over this particular shoulder. And then we'll come back to center and then we'll do the other side. So we're going to sit up tall as well and turn the gaze in the opposite way of direction. And again, you might want to round forward, but sitting up really tall, reach your chin towards that other shoulder. As if you intend to line up your chin over that shoulder. And then bookmark where you land here. And then we'll come back to center. And now we'll get into our breath. So let's shrug our shoulders up as we inhale. And as you exhale, relax your shoulders down. Now add a fist squeeze to that. Shrug your shoulders, squeeze your fist as you inhale. And then as you exhale, let it all soften. Now squeeze your face in addition. Squeeze your face, your fist, your shoulders. Inhale, lift. And exhale. Today we usually will take our hands in front, but I'm going to offer grabbing opposite elbows behind you for our centering breath today. So you got your forearms stacked, you're grabbing opposite forearms, you're leaning back into your forearms to help lift your chest. We'll take some deep breaths into the center of the heart, inhaling and exhaling. Continue a steady flow of breath. And then if there's any intention you wish, so at the time of this recording, we were talking earlier, there's a lot of seeds of change, there's a lot of shifts in the air. So opening up to change or opening up to a possible shift in your own life might be a great intention to set. Not knowing what's around the corner, but being open, creating space for something new. And then we'll take a deep breath together. Inhale to fill up. And then as you exhale, release your hands. And we'll extend our legs long out in front of us, bounce the knees just to remove some tension. So we're going to get into our hip and in our quad next. So you're going to lie on your belly. And you'll stack your hands one on top of the other, or arms one on top of the other, and you'll rest your cheek or your forehead on those stacked arms. And then we'll have our legs straight back behind us. So you'll walk your legs pretty close together. We want those inner knees touching. And then you'll bend your right knee and you'll reach back for the foot or ankle or pant leg, whatever you can grab, maybe the top of the foot. And we'll lower our head back down to the ground. We're just going to stretch through the front of the thigh. And if this is not really happening, you can't quite grab, you can take a towel, hook it around your foot or a yoga strap. Just going to take about 10 breaths, checking in with that right thigh. Letting your inner knees stay close together instead of splayed out. And taking slow, steady breaths into the belly. And we'll take a final breath here, inhaling. And as you exhale, let that leg release itself long, and you can kind of windshield wiper the feet or wag the hips side to side just to soften what might be gripped. And then we'll do the other side. You'll bend your left knee in, reach back with your left hand and grab whatever you can and pull that heel down towards the glutes. If the knees start to splay rather wide apart, see what it's like to bring the knees a little bit close together. Does that help create a little more stretch in the thigh? We'll be here for 10 breaths. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, release. And then we are going to, while we're here, we're going to come to our forearms, and you can always windshield wiper your feet as needed if your back feels a little tense. We are going to come up to our forearms, and we'll find some yang, just a little bit of engagement in our core and in our spine before we make it yin. So you can have your elbows right underneath your shoulders or a little bit in front or quite a bit in front. But what we're doing is we're actively pressing our arms into the ground and then rounding our spine like a cat pose, chin to chest, spine is rounded. And then as you inhale, let it unfurl, lift the eyes, lift the tail, tailbone up, and then exhale to round. Belly lifts off. It's almost like you're doing a plank, a forearm plank. And then inhale, lift the eyes, lift the tail. We'll do this 4 more times, rounding, and then extending and moving with the breath. Exhale to round, inhale to unfurl, and again. Last one. And then this is where we're now going to stay in our next yin pose. But first, let's set it up even deeper. Tuck all 10 toes under and start to wiggle your thigh bones further and further back, like you're growing longer legs down your mat. Once you can't migrate them anymore, untuck your toes. You can readjust your elbows in a way that feels accommodating. We want to feel like we can be here for about a minute. Arms are active, but everything else is pretty soft. Glutes, belly are relaxed, legs are heavy, feet are relaxed. You're welcome to turn your head and do a little half circle. Drop your chin down over to one shoulder, drop your chin down to your throat, and then over to the other shoulder, and then back to center, and then retrace your steps. Chin to shoulder, drop it down around. We'll do this 4 or 5 times, and eventually we'll pause and stay still. When you've done about an even a number, you can balance your head over your spine, and we'll stay here for 10 more breaths. All right, we'll lower all the way down to the belly and can rest your head on stacked hands and just take a moment to windshield wiper. We're gonna roll to one side for cat pulling its tail. So it is kind of like a side sphinx pose in a way. So we are going to be on our one forearm, and it's kind of like you're lounging at a slumber party. It's kind of that feeling. And then your top leg is going to kick forward, but your bottom leg is going to be in alignment with the rest of your spine and head. So I like to line up my spine and my head against the back edge of my mat as well as my bottom leg. And so with this, you're actually, instead of dropping your shoulder down like we did away from the ear, like we did in Sphinx pose, we're actually letting our shoulder hike up by our ear, and that's going to get all this fascia and the bottom of the waist and those ribs. It's a very common area to get tight. So it's going to feel a little shruggy, shoulder shruggy, and that's to be expected here. And you can play with walking your elbow a little further up your mat, and that might change the depth of stretch in the side. I'm gonna feel like kind of a hurt so good stretch in our waist. So this is where we're gonna stay, and we can add on if we want from here. So you might stay here, or you might reach back with your top arm, palm faces up, bend your back knee and catch your foot. So here's, you're pulling your tail, cat pulling its tail apart here. And then you can kind of reach the leg back in space a little bit so it becomes a little bit of a quad stretch. The most important thing to remember is you're letting the structure of your bones hold you here, and all your muscles and tissue can relax away from the bone. Ooh, I don't know about you, but this is kind of tight here. So it's a good practice to lean into the discomfort, breathe into the areas that feel tight. We're only going to be here for 30 more seconds. And the head can just be wherever feels easy on the neck. We'll come all the way out of this. We're actually going to come to a seat before we move on. So you'll make your way up. You can kind of feel a little asymmetrical. So feel that as you raise your arms over your head. Notice how the two sides feel, the two waists, maybe the two shoulders. Just kind of notice what changed in that short time we were in that pose. And then we'll do the other side. Same thing. Forearm to the floor, bottom leg and spine are in one long line, and then the top leg's going to kick out in front. So I just have my leg straight out. It's almost like you're roughly creating a 90-degree angle with your two legs. And then you'll press the shoulder down and away from your ear, and then you'll hike it up, and you'll just kind of feel that a few times, and then we'll hold that little hiked up shoulder, more or less. And some people lay their head down, but we want to make sure our neck is okay. It's not questionable. All right, so you can stay here. Maybe lean back, lean forward until you notice that big stretch in the waist. You can take cat pulling its tail, bending your bottom knee, grabbing a hold of your foot, and just kind of pulling the heel to your butt. Sliding the leg back in space will help as well. Big
belly breaths, breathing in even into the waist, into that rib cage that you're noticing the stretch. Letting your breath act as that soothing balm for any kind of tight, uncomfortable sensations arising. Take our final 3 breaths here. And then coming out gently, woo, and sitting up and noticing what shifted in the side bodies and the shoulders and the arms, just kind of checking in again. Notice what opened up. All right. Okay, so we are going to get into the shoulders a bit more thoroughly, shoulders and neck again, but let's start with one little stretch while we're seated here. So you're going to take your left fingertips either to the floor, maybe they just hover off the floor, but you're reaching your fingertips to the floor. And then you'll tilt, let your right ear fall to your right shoulder, so you're tilting your head away from that extended arm. And then you'll pick it back up as you inhale and exhale, tilt, and inhale, float it up. And we'll do that 4 more times. Just the smallest little movement, letting gravity kind of influence this stretch. Tilt. The next time you let your head tilt, stay there, and you can either just stay like this or take your other arm, your right arm overhead, and just lightly rest your hand on top of your ear. Although it may look like I'm pushing down on my head, that's not at all. It's the weight of the hand is adding a little more stretch to that left side of the neck. And then you're welcome to internally and externally rotate that left arm. Just breathing into the side of the neck, drifting your head and spine back, and so we're not collapsing forward at all. We'll take our last 3 breaths here. Now we come out of this a special way, so you keep your head where it is. Take your right fingertips to your right temple, take an inhale, exhale, lift your head up, and then just notice your neck as you turn from side to side. And then we'll do the other side. So again, we sit tall, sit on a prop if you need to help you sit up taller. You take your right fingertips, either hover at the floor or maybe they can touch the floor. Inhaling here, exhale. Ooh, left ear, left shoulder, inhale, float it up, and exhale, tilt, and inhale, float. And we'll do that a few more times. Let's do 2 more. And the next time you tilt your head, leave it there, just gently letting gravity pull you down. Right side of the neck starts to open. Maybe you stay here, maybe you take your left arm, sweep it over your head into your ear. Then breathing into the side of the neck. Finding all that space. And maybe you turn the arm in and out, like you're screwing a light bulb in the socket and then you screw it out of the socket. Letting the teeth separate as you breathe. We'll be here for 6 more breaths. And then we'll pause, keep your head where it is, take your left fingertips to your left temple, take a big breath in, exhale, woo. Bring your head over your spine and just kind of move it around, notice what opened up. All right, we're going to open the front of the body, the armpits, the heart, the chest, and we're gonna come into heart to earth pose. And it's important to remember this thing. Hands are going to be at the very least shoulder width, if not wider. So if you feel a lot of shoulder tension in this next one, you're going to take your hands even wider than they already are. So we're going to come to kneeling on our mat. I always use a blanket when I kneel because we hold these poses for such a long time. Even if you don't feel like you need it at first, I often feel eventually you will need it as time goes on. So we're going to go to our forearms. And so we want to look, and forearms rather broad, shoulder width. And we want to note our hips. So the hips are staying stacked over the knees. We're not going to sit back to our heels, and we're not going to collapse them to the mat. We're going to keep them stacked over the knees at all times for heart to earth pose. And then you're going to slide your arms forward quite a bit. The heart will melt down to the earth. Maybe the forehead touches, maybe the chin touches. If nothing touches, it's a good sign to grab a prop and stick it under your chest or under your forehead. And also, if this is feeling really intense, this is one of the more intense postures in yin, do put a prop under your heart or under your forehead here. We're going to be here for about a minute and a half. So again, take your arms wider if you need. You can have super long straight arms, or you can have sort of a bent elbow. Feeling a thorough stretch in the front of the body, the armpits, the chest. With each exhale, your heart gets that much heavier and your hips get that much lighter. We'll be here for 5 more breaths. Right. So you'll come out of that pose however you like. You could come to your hands and knees and do a little cat-cow, or you can take a child's pose, whatever you need to do to regroup. We're going to get into dragon pose. Now, disclaimer on this, it's a rather deep pose, and
We're gonna be in it not as long as our other poses for that reason, but it is recommended to have some sort of prop under your hands, like books or blocks, or maybe a bolster. You can kind of make it work. If you don't have any of those things, you're gonna make it work regardless, and you can interlace your fingers over a thigh, and I'll show you all those ways. But keep that in mind that because it's deeper, so I'm gonna have blocks, but you don't need blocks if you don't have them. So we're going to take our right foot and step it forward to the front of our mat. And then our back knee is on the blanket or on the floor. And then what you want to do is shift into your stretch. So there's quite a big hip opener happening here. So if you don't have blocks, you can hold your hands on top of your thigh and push down. It's kind of intense right away. So that's kind of the nature of this one. So we're going to be here for a little bit of time, and you can always come out and come back in. But let's start with 10 breaths here before we add on. All right, so that's kind of a mini yin pose. So now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to find a half split here. So I have my hands on my blocks. You could take your hands to the floor, or maybe one hand to the floor, the other hand to your leg. And we want to feel the back of the leg stretching in this moment. Maybe letting your head release, relax, back of the neck gets long and loose. Three more breaths here. All right, so this is a three-parter. So we did those first two poses. Now we're going to end with that pigeon pose, or also known as sleeping swan, with the same right leg. So you can take your right knee, bend it across your mat, slide your hips back, tuck your back toes under, and start to crawl it back. And then once you can't crawl back anymore, you will begin your folding forward. I like to put some sort of prop under my ribs or heart. You can do that or not. So this will be our longer held pose. We're going to be here for a minute, maybe a minute and a half longer. So if you need to come out early, you can. If you need to readjust, do take measures to do that. Otherwise, just see if you can melt even deeper into the shape. You can, with each exhale, surrender a little bit more as this moment passes and unfolds. You unfold. right, now the fun part. We're gonna come out of this and you can come into any neutral shape you like. I love to lie on my back every single time after all that, but you can sit, you can lie on your belly, but we just want to take note and see what shifted, having done 3 things on that right leg. See if you can feel in your body what opened up, what maybe moved or loosened or lengthened. And then once you take note of that, we'll go about doing all that again. Actually, we all need to lie on our back and neutralize our pelvis before we do a bunch of stuff on the other leg. So when you lie on your back, you're going to do the world's tiniest bridge pose. You're going to walk your heels close to your bum. Knees are bent, arms are down by your side. Push into those arms so your triceps are strong. And then hover your hips about 2 inches off the mat. And then squeeze all those muscles around your sacrum. So in other words, squeeze your butt. And then let it all relax. Let your hips get heavy. Let all those muscles soften again. We'll do this twice more. Hover the hips, squeeze as you dig your heels into the floor. Squeeze your glutes, squeeze your hamstrings. And then let it all soften. One more like that. Push into your heels, lift. Squeeze, 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 and then let it go. And then we'll gather the knees in, massage what we just worked. And then rolling to the side. All right, so we'll make our way up. All right, so blocks or no blocks, we're going to start with that dragon pose, this time with your left leg forward. So again, and you can interlace your fingers and push down. So your arms are rather active here. And instead of going in like 110% of your range, back out of it a little bit because we will be staying here for a while. So I like to walk my knee a little further back, so my knee doesn't go like over my foot and my heel lifts. That's not going to be sustainable. We want our knee over our foot, no further. So yeah, so I'm going to use blocks on this side, but you can of course use your hands. Oh, and this is the fun side, I can tell. We'll be here for a minute. Imagine you could breathe into that right hip. Take our last 3 breaths here. And then we'll press our way up and kind of do somewhat of a counter pose, straightening through the front leg, lengthening that front leg, folding the torso over that leg for your hamstring stretch. You can also flex your foot a little bit to get more out of it. Moving the head around, lengthening the back of the neck is really good here. We often tense the back of the neck usually, kind of out of habit. All right, moving into the third part of this sequence, we're going to come into pigeon. So you'll bend your left knee, you'll slide it behind your left wrist from all fours, walk that left leg across, and then stretch your right leg all the way along behind you, and then you can start to fold any amount you choose. And we'll be here. Taking note if the upper body is wanting to take on some of the tension you're releasing in the lower body. Breathing it out can really help, like exhaling out through the mouth can help move that energy. And also wiggle around. If you're holding in your face or your shoulders, you can dissolve some of that tension. Be here for about a minute more. All right, we'll get to notice yet again what shifted when we lie on our back. We'll get there in a bit of lazy pace. And then check in again, notice how you feel from right to left. Maybe there's a sense of balance or evenness. And then once you notice that shift, we'll transition, we'll roll to the side, or let's do our little pelvis rebalancing before we move on. So digging the heels into the ground, reaching the arms long, push into the feet, hover and squeeze. And we're not tucking our tailbone up to the ceiling. We're kind of like letting our tailbone point to the end of the mat and then squeeze. And then let it all go. We'll do that again. Hover and squeeze. Relax and soften down. And one more time. Hover, squeeze. Relax and soften. And then we'll roll to the side. Actually, let's stay on our side with bent knees. So I'm going to just sit up so I can take this blanket and use it as a pillow for my head. So I would recommend a little prop under the side of your head for this. And maybe even a second prop between your knees. You know, props are totally optional, but so that might feel good to have both. And then you want to have some, well, I have a wall behind me, but ideally you'd have floor behind you. But what we're going to do, let me scoot forward, is we're going to stack our hands right out in front of us on the floor. And then raise your top arm up and back. You're going to open into a twist as you inhale. And then as you exhale, you'll bring it back. So we're going to do this about 5 or 6 times. And then eventually we're going to hold the twist. So hands together, palms together, and inhale, reach the arm up and back. And then as you exhale, you'll bring it back. And I don't want a blanket. There we go. All right, inhale, arm reaches up and back. And exhale, return. Let's do that 2 more times. And last one. And then we'll stay open, and this is where we're in our next yin pose, so please readjust your body. I always prefer to bend my elbows, push them into the floor, snuggle my shoulder blades, walk them over to the left side of the mat, or more in the direction where my bent knees are on the mat, to get those shoulders behind my back, and then open the arms wide. You can gaze the opposite direction and where the knees are. We'll linger here for a little bit.
And since we're focusing on neck and shoulders today, just making sure there's lots of space between your ears and your shoulders. So this is why a prop under the head might be nice. So we can keep the back of the neck long, keep the chest open, shoulders down. And then you'll take your top arm, your back arm, you'll sweep it all the way back to stack. And you'll turn your whole body and lie flat on your back and just take a pause. Checking in with yourself again. I'm gonna turn my body around the other direction on my mat, just so I can face you a little bit more. But otherwise, you can just simply turn your body where you're at. You can flip onto the other hip for the second side. All right. So possibly a prop between the knees if that feels, especially if you have like a iffy low back tonight, if it feels a little tender, that can feel really helpful. Take your arms straight out in front, palms together, and then we'll inhale, raise the top arm up and then all the way back. Exhale, sweep the arm forward. We'll do that again. Inhale, up and back. And now you can exhale, come forward and inhale. And exhale. Let's take 2 more breaths. And last one. And then we'll open up and stay open and then readjust your shoulders, guide them more under your back. Set your props up for success as you marinate in this really nice passive twist. I always think of twist as extra helpful in processing perhaps thoughts and feelings, digesting the day, and then literally digesting food. Take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, take your back arm, sweep it forward. And then you'll make your way. We'll come up to seated next, and we'll do another a seated pose now. All right, so we're gonna do mermaid on a rock, and the rock implies a prop you will lay on. And of course, you don't always need props to do yin yoga, but it sure helps sometimes. So if you have a bulkier prop, like a bolster or a pillow, grab that next. And then also, if you have another pillow, a second pillow or a blanket, grab that as well. So this is how we're going to set up our rock. So first, let's just sit cross-legged. And let's move if it's a longer prop, that's going to serve you better to do it long ways, because your torso will be lengthening over this prop neck. So you kind of turn it long ways if it is a long version, if that's available. And you'll take the skinny edge to your outer right hip. And then you'll take that additional prop to the edge of your bolster or your pillow. Possibly this could be a head pillow for your head. All right, so now that we're set up, your legs are crossed. The leg that's furthest away from your prop, so in this case, it's my left leg. I'm gonna bend it back, and this is known as mermaid legs or deer legs. It's kind of whatever Pilates or yoga term, it's the same pose really. And so this is our mermaid shape in our legs. So the sole of the right foot connects to the left inner thigh. You can certainly take another blanket and pad under your shin or ankle if this gets a little uncomfortable. So I recommend that if you do have extra props. Then we're going to turn and face our rock. So hands frame your pillow, and you're going to twist your navel to the right. And then we'll stay here and just do a gentle cat-cow, rounding your spine, chin to chest, and then inhale, lifting. Now, of course, if you don't have any prop, you will just have an invisible rock to lay on, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. Rounding your spine and then lifting your spine. We'll do that one more time. And then the next time you lift your heart, you're going to start to crawl down your mat and lay your torso on that prop. Your head is turned whatever direction is the easiest. Sometimes it's tempting to make it super twisty. You can turn it the other way later, but you want to kind of marinate here initially before you get into a really deep neck twist. So if you don't have these props, you would just lower down as far as comfortable. So it'd be something like in pigeon, where your arms are on the floor, your elbows are on the floor. Maybe you stack your hands under your forehead or fist. So that would be your version here. Ooh. And so think of the prop as allowing you to go a bit deeper in this pose, giving you permission to soften a bit more, to surrender, to broaden the back. Kind of thoroughly open you here. You can even take a scan and notice if a part of your body is wanting to hold on, like your jaw or your shoulders, the muscles in the face, giving all those areas of tension permission to soften just 1% more.
We'll press our hands into the floor and just gradually roll through your spine to stack up. And then we'll take a pause here. We'll go to the other side. So you can just simply pick up your props and move them over to the opposite hip, or you could turn around and face the opposite direction in your room to get to the other side. And we find that twist. A few cat cows here, just finding some space. And then once you lift your heart on this next one, you'll start to fold over your props and readjust. I like to come up a little bit, turn again, twist my navel to the left, and then lay down, and then have either cheek on your mat, on your props. I'll stay here. We'll take one more breath here. And then as you exhale, we'll crawl our hands to the floor underneath our shoulders, slowly make our way up. And we're heading into our final pose, Shavasana. It's the most relaxing pose of them all, meant to be about rest and no longer focusing on your body, your breath, or your mind, just letting it all kind of mellow and soften and kind of merge out or merge in, however you want to look at it. So setting yourself up in whatever way feels good. We'll take just a few minutes here to rest. Shavasana.
We'll circle back from where we started. We'll transition slowly, gently up to our seat one more time. And we'll revisit that little neck check-in we did at the very beginning, the pre-test, and then now we get to do the post-test. It's very scientific sounding. We're gonna sit up tall. And as you sit up tall, you're gonna turn your chin as if it could stack directly over your shoulder. Just see, as you bookmarked before, the beginning, you notice kind of the range or the feeling in the neck. Just notice how it's shifted. Maybe the range was a little different. And then we'll bring it back to center and then over to the other side. So I think, just as much as we hold physical tension in our shoulders, we can hold a lot of mental tension. And so when we, have the opportunity to do yin yoga or other relaxing practices, I think in a lot of ways, it just really helps shift the shoulders and neck for that reason as well, along with the stretching. So checking in with this chin over this shoulder. We'll bring it back to center and we'll gather our hands together at the heart and bow the thinking mind to the caring heart. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share your practice. It is truly an honor to serve you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace.